Hey there, everyone. I'm meteorologist Chris Mulkey, and we're looking at a historic storm here. Just watching the magnitude of what is Ian moving on shore is absolutely breathtaking. Even now, where we're seeing some hurricane gusts getting up to about 77 miles per hour along the shoreline, it only just is a small piece of what they're going to be seeing here going forward. So as of the 12 p.m. update, and likely we'll go at least 10 minutes here, so we'll be able to see the new update as we're going through this, there was sustained winds at 155 miles per hour. That is insane. So through this morning, it went through a rapid intensification. At 2 p.m., the update had 120 mile per hour winds. Then it went to 140, and then we jumped up to 155. This is very close to Category 5, but really we're splitting hairs between 2 miles per hour, between a 4 and a 5. No matter what, it's catastrophic damage. Moving north-northeast at 9 miles per hour, central pressure at 937. So this is a beast that we're seeing move through. And I want to show you some of the storm reports that have come through. For one, on the dirty side of a hurricane, and we updated that on our Weather IQ page, so make sure to go to that on YouTube. The dirty side of the storm is the right side in which the path is moving. So since it's moving off towards the north-northeast, it's this side. It's this side that usually has the best chance for tornadoes, for the most dangerous storm surge, the most significant rainfall, and of course the strongest winds, especially right on that northeastern side of the eye wall. And this is going to be historic, kind of like what Charlie was. Charlie had winds at about 150 miles per hour as it made landfall, so I think that's the closest comparison, because the spot that it's going to be making landfall is almost spot on where it should be. So the most recent report that we saw was a gust of 77 miles per hour. That was right off the coast. That was at Cape Coral. We're going to see some of these in the triple digits before you know, heading into the afternoon. So rolling forward, what can you expect? Well, for one, there's a chance that we could be upgraded to a Category 5 before it makes landfall. At least it's staying that 155. Note, Michael was a Category 4 storm at 155 miles per hour, and they later on upgraded to a 5, giving it that 157. And right here, Kimberly says praying. I think that that's the best. As a meteorologist this morning, Brad, and we'll agree with this, and Larry and I were talking about this, there's just sometimes that you know the forecast, and when it's actually happening, you realize that nothing's going to change. Nothing better is going to happen from the forecast, and that's happening right now. And we're going to go through some of the new updates that we're seeing here. Here's the most threatening one, storm surge. Check this out, 12 to 18 feet. So from Inglewood to Bonita Beach, there's a chance of a 12 to 18-foot storm surge. That's a wall of water that high. Let's put it into perspective. Here's this graphic. A single-story home usually is about 17 feet. So that means 12 feet, the bottom end, would bring this up above the gutters of these single-story homes. Of course, the taller ones won't have any problem there except for the massive flooding. So that means it could be up to the rooftops in some areas right along the shoreline. That is life-threatening, and that's why people are forced to evacuate, especially if you live near the shoreline, because of how much water is being pushed on the shore. Then you have the water that's coming from the sky. We're looking at potential of anywhere from up to 12 to even 18 plus inches of rain, and that's the central parts of Florida. So it's not just where it makes landfall for the strongest winds and the most deadly storm surge. You have extreme flash flooding, and these are also areas that could have tornadoes starting to spawn up the coast. So it's really a quadruple threat that any major hurricane brings as it moves on shore, and some of them are a little bit stronger than others, and Ian's going to be a historic storm, to say the least. So here's a look at the track. Still 155 mile per hour winds. Again, that was the update that we had at noon. Gust to 190. That's absolutely monstrous. So before you know it, likely if you're watching this later in the day, it's already made landfall. But I think the biggest, most interesting change that we've seen is what it does after Florida. Before, it was pushing through Florida into Georgia, up into South and North Carolina. Now it moves back out to sea, which is never good, no, as far as hurricanes go, because whenever they go back into open water, they could re-strengthen. It's not going to be there that long, but that's still going to keep a tropical storm strength. So that's going to bring maybe a 2 to 5 foot storm surge at the max that the models are showing. This, of course, could change by Friday for Charleston and Savannah, areas that naturally flood even when there's a heavy thunderstorm rain. And then eventually it works its way into the Charlotte area, and we'll be on the eastern side with some of the heavier rain for that as well, and maybe some gusty winds. I want to do a comparison before we move on. So I mentioned Hurricane Charlie. Sometimes it's eerie how some storms set up. Well, Charlie made a similar path where it crossed Cuba, made landfall in about the same area that Ian's about to, and then it exited, affected the Carolinas, and then moved up the coast. So we see a very good similarity about how close this path is going to be, as you can see between Fort Myers and Sarasota right there. So very close as far as where the landfall matches up. But also, an I name is a historic hurricane name. So far, there have been 12 names that began with the letter I that have been retired. Well, it's a no-brainer that Ian is going to be added to this list. That would be 13. So of any other letter, the next closest is C and F that have 9 retired names. So Ian's going to go on a laundry list of ones such as Ida just last year, Irma, Irene, Ivan, just to name a few. All right, let's talk about North Carolina and South Carolina. So here's the big forecast. Johnny says, will Charlotte be getting any of the high winds? I'll get to that. I don't think you're going to have high winds necessarily, especially compared to what we're looking at from what Ian's doing right now. I think at most you're going to see about that 30 to 50 mile per hour wind. The biggest threat for us is really that flooding potential, and you already see this on Friday. Friday's becoming a little bit more of a weather-aware day just because the amount of rain that could come down. It could be widespread, rain for several hours, still have enough oomph from the tropical storm that we have some gusty winds. So I think by your Friday afternoon, things are starting to go downhill. Friday evening, overnight, that's where we could see some of the peak winds. But models are all over the place how this is going to be handled. But one thing we do know that there will be some flooding along the shoreline in South Carolina as the tropical storm exits Florida and comes back on shore. But we already saw the big change today. A lot can change tomorrow. So we'll continue to keep you updated online different ways about all the changes that we're seeing. As far as how much rain we're going to see, right now, the models are indicating that you could see anywhere from 2 to 5 inches across the area. Weather in Gastonia named some specifics, Evelyn, Tanisha. Where you live doesn't really matter compared to the amount of rain you're going to see. I think some areas could see 2, some areas could see 5. If the storm breaks up a lot more, we'll see far less. But I'm about to show you what that track looked like. For one, our models are agreeing with that general range, seeing a range from about 1 to 5 according to this, and that's starting on Friday night, Saturday, and then I think once you get to later on Saturday, things start to break up a little bit more, and I'll show you that. So the next couple of days, we're just looking at clouds. Look outside, it's a little bit cloudier today. Those are the upper level clouds from a stationary front, meaning a front that's not really moving, that Ian is going to push up into us. So that's why we're seeing the cloud cover for the time being right now. Think we're going to stay dry, maybe a sprinkle at most late on Thursday. Here's the tropical storm. Again, I think a lot can change here. It's really interesting how this went from moving directly through Florida and Georgia, and now it's moving offshore and then bending back into the Carolinas. So you have to keep up on the forecast. But it looks like a lot of rain. Tropical storm winds making landfall in South Carolina. Here's where it's on our doorstep. So this is 5 p.m. That's where we could really start seeing some of the heavier rain. I would say east of I-77 right now has the best chance for the higher winds that are associated with this. Somebody says, will this be a Cat 5? Very close as far as landfall for Florida, but here locally for the Charlotte area, if that's what you're watching for, you can see the rain kind of starts to break up heading through your Saturday. I think this is underdoing a little bit. There still should be more showers that'll bend back in, and we have on and off rain through this coming weekend. Also, a better look at some of those wind gusts. These spots right here are representing that you could have those gusts up to about that 40 to 50 mile per hour range. This is Friday evening. So if you have any sort of plans on Friday evening, I would maybe try to change things up a little bit. So we're having a lot of people from YouTube that you're talking about a Florida family being evacuated, those who stayed. Things are getting pretty scary down there. Some of the live streams I've been seeing, just with what the tropical storm, borderline hurricane winds look like, this is a scary storm. For any of those loved ones that you know that did stay in, especially that live along the shoreline, I know this is such an easy thing to say, but really thoughts and prayers. Because this is going to be a major, major storm. Hopefully everyone immediately in the flood zones are out of there, especially with that storm surge that came back up. And again, back for the winds, gusts to about 30 to 40 miles per hour. The reason why it's such a crazy forecast for the Charlotte area is just because of where the different tracks could go. Look at it, goes as far east as Wilmington, bends it back more through Georgia, so a lot can change. Let's move forward to the newest update. So this one just came out at 1 p.m. I'm not really seeing any changes here. You have 155 mile per hour winds. By the way, the National Hurricane Center is the one that decides this. Even though it's only by 2 miles per hour, it's going to take them a lot in order for them to upgrade this from observations and everything to 157 or that 160 range, because a Category 5 storm is legendary. It's epic. It's very rare. The only ones that did that was Michael. I explained at the top of this live stream. It was at this same speed and then was upgraded months later once they were reviewing everything. But one thing that's scary about this is if you ever saw the video from Mexico Beach, we could see some areas like that in Florida coming up. So there's a lot. There's a lot that it could be going down with this storm. How it affects the Carolinas, we're going to have a lot more information really tomorrow. But through the day, Brad's going to be keeping you updated online. Thanks a lot for joining me online. And be safe, everyone. This is a major storm, and some of the images that we're going to see once the lights come back on later on tomorrow, once we really see what the damage is going to be devastating. So, again, thoughts and prayers, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll update you a little bit later on today.